All right. So we have Aaron, Joel, and Kyriakos. I'm going to get that by the time this is over. So we're going to start off the first question of introducing yourself, kind of a bit of your background, where you work. And according to Alan, law enforcement is very good at whack-a-mole right now. So I also want you to rank your whack-a-mole skills.
Oh, wow. So real quick, I'm Joel Carson, Secret Service. I'm assigned over to our cyber intelligence section, which is under the Criminal Investigations Division at headquarters. Also detailed over to the Bureau's National Cyber Investigative Task Force, NCITF. Within my section, though, we focus on we're a boutique shop. We only have 15 personnel, so we tend to focus on the higher cybercrime criminals that we know of, players that's been in for a long time, maybe shifted from card to ransomware. So we're very familiar with them, all they've done is just changed change their avenues of revenue making. So that's the basic. We'll get into the Aaron.
I'm Aaron Sparley, currently with the United States Secret Service. I'm a NIFA network intrusion forensic analyst, but prior to that, I spent almost 2 decades with the Portland Police Bureau in Portland, Oregon. 10 of those years I served in the digital forensics unit on a couple task forces, both with FBI Cyber and the United States Secret Service ECTF, which is now CFTF, I believe. We like to change acronyms around in the federal government, I see. So I'm going to be mostly speaking with the local, I'll give you the local law enforcement hat, even though I currently wear now a Fed hat.
I'm Kyriakos Vasilakos, FBI. So I am with the Washington field office. I'm one of 2 cyber criminal supervisors there. I'm the supervisor of our cyber task force. We have the largest cyber task force in the country. Previously, I was actually at Cyber Division working with nation-state intrusions. My whack-a-mole skills are awesome. Thank you very much, Alan, for telling people to contact law enforcement. Please do call us early, call us often, share information with us. We really want to help you. We do not want to get in the way. We just want to help you and help the victim.
All right. Question number 2. Has your agency, maybe agency is the wrong word, your organization ever been involved in a ransomware case?
Yes.
All right.
Many. All the time, in close coordination with Secret Service, and then also, when there are incident responses, we do coordinate with CISA. But the way, just real quick, for how the FBI conducts ransomware investigations, in case you get different calls from different people, is that there are 56 field offices nationwide, and different offices develop a subject matter expertise on a ransomware variant. That office is going to be responsible for conducting the investigation. That being said, here, for example, in Washington, D.C., you might be surprised, but we often have many ransomware victims. Oftentimes, I'm calling to my colleagues, be it up in Newark, out in Dallas, Seattle, Houston, because they have the subject matter expertise for the variant that we're dealing with at that time. So you may get a call from 2 different FBI agents. Oftentimes, what I'm going to try and do is put you in touch with a person who has the best knowledge to help you. That being said, if you're in our area, we're going to help if there needs to be done. Again, if there's going to be an incident response, if there's going to be on the ground incident response, we would assist that from our side. But again, we're always going to get you in touch with that subject matter expertise because they're going to really help you. They're going to have the TTPs of how the actor works. They'll help inform the threat hunt. And yes, we recommend against paying the ransom. However, it's a business decision at the end of the day. Alan, I'm curious to know as to who has been sanctioned, because my understanding, when you're coordinating with law enforcement, which is a gray term, I'm not aware to date of individuals being sanctioned. That's not to say it hasn't been done, but that coordination is a key piece. The more information that you can share with us, the more we can develop our expertise and help those next victims.
Yes.
All right.
No, absolutely. We've worked collaboratively with both FBI and Secret Service out of the Portland office on numerous ransomware cases.
Yes, obviously the answer is yes. And as you can see, there's a lot of overlap, right? There's a lot of embedding, coordinating, and collaboration going on behind the scenes. I will say, just to follow up on the FBI, we have about approximately 44 cyber fraud task force throughout the United States. They're embedded in the field offices, and we get involved with dirt, at different times. So one thing my unit does, we also handle a lot of the confidential informants that are operating out of here in the Washington field office area.
And with that, so we're obviously trolling, we're doing undercover purchases, we're doing things like that. So maybe we make a deal with an initial access broker and try to learn who the victim is, right? Try to learn from the data set we purchased that, oh, okay, this belongs to a financial institution in Dallas, Texas. And then we're gonna coordinate with our field office to make that, first call, first response, right? Knock on the door of the bank, say, hey, not for not, do these look like admin credentials to you? Is this something? And if, then start working from intrusion. And I would say a lot of times we've been, very 50-50, right? Sometimes we go there and they're like, oh, yeah, we've already called FBI. We're on it. We know about it. We're working the intrusion. Perfect. There's been 50% of the times they had no idea, right? And they're like, yes, those credentials match. Wow, thank you. And then we're like, well, at least we bought the data. It's not out there in the wild yet. So, so there's that.
Okay. All right, next question. What criteria does your agency or organization have to get involved? Does it care about location, size, industry, et cetera? Or do you take every call?
Yeah, we're going to take every call. Obviously, there's some that benefit more than others, right? The smaller mom and pop shops, one point of sale terminal kind of businesses, they may not have the resources to call a professional IR firm and digital forensics, so we're there to help those. But obviously, if it's a critical infrastructure, things like that, we're going to have to spin it up. There's going to be notifications made and things like that, but we're here to serve the public.
In regards to the Portland Police Bureau in the state of Oregon, we have statewide jurisdiction. Obviously, our first primary is to serve the citizens of the city of Portland. However, because I sat on a couple task forces and kind of create a little bit of a niche for myself in regards to memory forensics and malware analysis, I would get tasked with cases all over the country from both FBI and Secret Service to do sort of more of a forensic analysis on that. So in that regards, they didn't really have like any skin in the game whether or not it was local or if it was a national case.
So again, I think it goes back to more and more ransomware investigations are a whole of government campaign. So all the agencies are coordinating with each other to get involved. For us, like Joel said, regardless of the size, we'll have some level of involvement. If that's a case agent reaching out to see, if you have any images that you can share with us, or if it's our cyber action team responding. For a cyber action team, for CAT to respond, that's going to be your higher profile victim, or if we believe that perhaps there could be an impact on national security. That being said, it's always really important to reach out to us. One thing we are seeing more and more in IC3 is we're seeing the outside counsels submit the IC3 reports. So really my plea to you is to plea with your in-house and outside counsel to get us involved as early as possible. And again, CISA, Cyber Information Sharing Act, sharing indicators with us is not privileged communications.
All right, so one more question, then we're going to open this up to the audience. So quick kind of the question here of, what is your organization's primary goal of getting involved? Is it to kind of help the victim recover? Is it to get the bad guy? Is it to get money back? Just pure intel?
So, obviously for the FBI, yes. Attribution, holding people accountable. Our cyber strategy, which I'm sure Joel is familiar with, is imposing risks and consequences against the actors. That's again, sanctioning them, attacking the cyber criminal ecosystem. So again, we'll look at those mixers and tumblers. But for the ransomware actors, we're going to look to disrupt their infrastructure. If they're nice enough to travel to Poland for holidays, yes, we'll pick them up. But when we're talking about victim engagement, our goal is to engage with you guys, with the victim, outside counsel, really to get the best understanding as to what is occurring, how to prevent that reinfection, but then also to collect those forensic artifacts that can help us get towards attribution and hold people accountable, or again, sanction them.
Again, it really for us, it just comes down to attribution, and again, identifying, if we can, some sort of maybe affiliate ID or whatever campaign that might be associated with, and then get that to whatever office, field office, whether it's FBI or Secret Service that is overseeing, or task force that's overseeing that case, for basically just continued attribution.
Everything they said, I have no real value to add, except, one of the goals would obviously be, prevention aspect. I know the Secret Service does a lot of outreach. We're trying to get ahead of the game. Prevention and detection is really spent a lot of our focus lately with the different, we're working with NCFTA, we have different alliances, the ISACs, we hold table topic exercises, just again, trying to get, hey, let's, so I say one of our goals would obviously be in the prevention realm as well.
All right, questions? Anyone yet? All right, one over here already. Good.
Favorite forensic tool or one that's most popular in your unit? I'll start with autopsy and cyber triage.
Wow.
Is it bad that we're the government, so it's free, it's cheap? I like it as well.
But if there's any other ones that have helped your shop or helped you personally? Repeat the question.
He said, is there any particular forensic tool that we find beneficial? There is one that, I don't want to give shout outs to particular commercial companies or anything like that. But when it comes to ransomware, I don't think there is one in particular, because as we all know, varying tools, varying results, right? The way they parse databases, the way they do things. Obviously, we have cyber triage. We have a variety of tools, and I think the more tools in the tool belt, the better. But I'm not going to say endorse one in particular for ransomware. Aaron?
Yeah, I think for me, again, just going back to sort of my niche where I've sort of developed myself, it's going to definitely be volatility. I've been able to quickly do a lot of analysis strictly from just grabbing memory. Like most recently, I just did a Qbot case where I pretty much had most of the indicators solved before I was even done dealing with most of the hosts. And I just got released to actually walk through that case publicly, but that was a massive win, and it was all done from memory. So,
I think I saw that actually.
my review?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not going to follow that up. I agree with what Joel said. It's hard for us to support a specific tool. All the tools are really beneficial, but again, I think that's again a point to contacting law enforcement, because there may be some tools that we can bring. There also obviously are the IOCs that we're bringing, maybe that aren't out in the open just yet. So again, please contact us.
Good. There's a question in the back. Yep.
Sorry. Curiosity. I'm on the Washington Task Force. Tom Harper with at OIG. But I was wondering if you guys could help and comment on the lack of artifacts when we get called into a ransomware investigation. What we typically see is that people aren't as robust with their logging collection, and those are things that really help us with those ransomware cases. And so if you would care to comment on and maybe encourage the logging collection and that kind of, and what kind of logs we're looking for. Thanks.
Yeah, obviously logs are very important to us. I would say we're being stymied even before we get to the victim because of the outside counsels. We'll have people reach out to us, and then we'll reach back out to them to discuss a ransomware incident, and outside counsel will say that there's nothing to see here. So again, it goes back to understanding, as I think Alan pointed out, the 170 different variants. It's very hard for us and the federal government to track all of those variants. The expertise that we do develop is from the incident response and the forensic reports that we do develop. It's also in working with you guys and getting your reports, but we don't get access to those reports if outside counsel doesn't allow us to see them. So it's really important for you to impress upon the importance are there any lawyers in the room? To impress upon the lawyers in the room, sorry, to really share that information with law enforcement, because it helps protect everybody.
I mean, I pretty much would have to echo the same thing. I mean, going back to your question or your earlier statement, you can't really motivate people to do anything that they don't want to do initially. So that's always the crux, right? So, and you're coming into it after the game, so it really wouldn't matter what I said at that point, because what we get is what we get at that point.
Yeah, nothing to add on why the actors may or may not be, we talked, the last presenter talked about, they're just also getting better at cleaning themselves up, using, particular commands to wipe things. So got nothing to add.
So it's a quick question that maybe help set the context on in terms of how do your groups usually get involved? Do you actually do response and do endpoint investigations? Do you just get reports afterwards? Do you guys work alongside commercial firms? I guess what is your usual engagement, I guess?
Yeah, so so my particular unit, I don't do that. I know overall in the Secret Service how we get involved, but it would be a coordinated effort. Like what we provide to the stakeholders, obviously, is that trust. I'm going to use quote free advice. I mean, it is taxpayer dollars, but it's for free. We're trying not to get in the way of the digital forensic firms, but just provide an extra value or input to the stakeholders, to that business, to make the decision on, hey, I've got a clearer picture. I've got to make those tough decisions and choices. I see a hand. I don't know. Yes, ma'am.
Yep.
I have a question about how does the determination on your end work about whether after you're on the OFAC list or not, and then who communicates that to the jurisdiction, the client organization, does someone pull a letter, or how do you
I know from my perspective, the Treasury OFAC is driving a lot of that. As far as especially with the National Security Council and things like that, they are being politic. There's pretty much like reasonable cause being put together. It's presented in front of OFAC. It's not in my realm or wheelhouse on what I deal with on a day-to-day basis, but it's a committee type environment that how you get onto that list.
Good. Do you want to answer both the how you get involved, or with your responses, or in the OFAC?
Yeah, so how we get involved varies just because the reporting process is kind of different, but I can just say this: once we do get involved, so when I would get involved with the Portland Police Bureau, it was multi-agency, so it would be we'd be working in collaboration with both the FBI, the local FBI Cyber Task Force in Portland, as well as the United States Secret Service, and essentially we would just utilize the assets and resources that we would have available. My specific role was less on the investigative portion and was strictly doing more of like the incident response forensic stuff. So I had way less to do with a lot of the actual legal process and the investigation process, and it was definitely more about collection and analysis for me.
So a company could bring you in instead of hiring a commercial firm at some point.
You mean like a victim company?
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
They would still do it in collaboration. They would have a third-party service provider, and then typically it depends on how far down the road they are with that third-party service provider and legal to how much we would get involved. Like we might start the process and then eventually maybe doors would get shut and it was what it was, or we would get carte blanche and we would be able to work it all the way through.
Yeah.
So first with the OFAC question, like Joel said, it's committee, it's through Treasury. They're the ones who determine, who's sanctioned. When we're having discussions with victims, again, we're always going to recommend against ransom. It ultimately is going to become a business decision. Obviously, if we have indications that you are going to pay a sanctioned entity, we'll inform you. I do understand that at times, again, based off of our expertise on how the actors may work or how they may negotiate a ransom, we can provide that insight as to whether or not they're a quote-unquote honest broker. But obviously, we're seeing more and more of that double and triple extortion. As for when we're going to respond, like everyone up here said, it's going to vary. It's going to depend on how we receive the report. Was it an IC3 report? Was it something that you, again, made a contact, you made a friend at the FBI, and someone called FBI? And again, also, if there is already an IR firm involved, like we don't want to come out there just to sit right next to you and just watch you do stuff. If there's value add that we can provide, then we'll come out. But everything is done with consent. I can't say that enough, that it's really up to your clients to consent to the government to come out. And what friends we bring along is, again, going to be based on the consent that is developed between the victim and with the government. With that being said, it's also really important to understand with the consent piece, as you're talking to your clients, as I'm hoping they're doing tabletop exercises, ensure that those tabletop exercises include a law enforcement component. I'm obviously going to say call the FBI, they're going to say call Secret Service, just call one of us. We have MOUs in place where we're going to coordinate with each other. With CISA, we have an MOU in place that if they're going to coordinate to do a remediation, that they're going to at least notify the FBI. So again, if it rises to that level, then we'll come out and we'll help. But again, it comes down to consent. We're not going to impose ourselves upon you. We're going to come out with whatever authority you give us, and we're going to provide what value add. We'll do host, we'll do network investigations, and we're going to provide that information and those IOCs back to you. If we have YARA and SNORT rules that we can share with you, we're obviously going to share those with you. If we develop those during the course of our incident response, we're going to share those with you. We're going to share those with the client. We're not going to, anything that we develop from an incident response, we're not going to keep close hold. Now, might it be that there's previous investigation that relates to classified information that we can't share? Potentially. if there's a determination that we can share that information with you, we'll work to get the appropriate redons, appropriate, one-time redons, if appropriate, if necessary.
Good. And just to clarify there, someone doesn't need to call both Secret Service and FBI, so just make one call and magic will happen.
I would say if you have a contact, call that contact. If you don't have a contact, again, if you submit the IC3 report, people think that the IC3 reports just go into an ether and they never hear back. We get those. We get those. We look at those. We look at those closely. And oftentimes, again, we're in touch with the other agencies and investigators for ransomware to, again, see, is this something new? Something else that, like Joel said, looking at where marketplaces where they might be selling that leaked data. We're often times looking at those affiliates who are offering up access, trying to get in front of that before the victim has an issue, and then working with the victim to then address their issue. We, the FBI, will not do remediation. So I just want to be clear, we're not going to do remediation. We will provide you those IOCs to help in your remediation efforts. CISA has a lot of resources for remediation, but just to be clear, we're not going to do the remediation. We're going to do the investigation to hold people accountable and to help you prevent reinfection.
Great.
Sorry,
question
I'm so
over there.
close.
Sorry.
How do you deal with bigger companies, especially when they're working with outside counsel, who are a little bit more reluctant to share information? Let's say, for example, once they've engaged with a third-party forensics firm, and they basically stated they completed their investigation and they confirm there was no exfiltration of sensitive, data, CUI, and all of that. But like deep down, no, there was a compromise, and they're just basically saying there's,
So again, we can't force anybody, and there's so much work out there that if a victim doesn't want to work with us, we're going to move on to the next victim. Quite frankly, the only thing that I can again implore you and your colleagues and others are to share that information with us, so we can help get a better understanding as to what the variant of the moment is doing and how we can hold people accountable and protect people. So we're not gonna browbeat somebody. We're not gonna compel them. If they want to provide that information to us, we'll gladly accept it.
So if someone pays a ransom, right, and they actually aren't sure if they're going to get in trouble for paying, does bringing you all in increase the chances that they could get in trouble? I mean, does that?
No. It's part of the OFAC sanction piece is coordination with law enforcement can impact the likelihood of a sanction. Again, anecdotally from Kyriakos Vasilakos common spelling, I'm not aware of sanctions being paid out, not to say that it has not been, or sanctions being levied, not to say that that has happened. I don't know if, Joel, if you're aware of instances where sanctions have been paid.
I don't, but I do have a follow-up.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. No, so I was going to say, no, I don't have a specific incident. However, to kind of answer your question, it goes along with paying a ransom. If you do cooperate, though, with law enforcement, this is codified that any fines may be mitigated, of course, by whether it's a judge or whatever, but the fact that you cooperated with law enforcement and, you're falling on your knees to your sins, but you ask for forgiveness type deal, they are mitigating in any type of fines. They take that into consideration as opposed to, no, I'm not going to cooperate. Yes, you may know I paid a, OFAC ransom payment, just kind of, so it's something to take in consideration. I will also say as reporting starts to become more robust, I know this was talked about a couple of years ago, but, but making it where, okay, if it's not a mandatory reporter, you don't fall in that. But maybe the cyber insurance companies, like if you don't want to cooperate with law enforcement, then that's a piece of the actual insurance written into the to the policy. So it's something to consider. Sure.
I have one last question, sorry, but just a follow-on. So from Homeland Security standpoint and also DOJ, is there any future policies in play in compelling these companies to work with law enforcement a little bit more, especially some of the government contractors?
Who wants to take the compelling?
I'll take it. It's one that actually, it was released a couple days ago, actually. So we have the Cyber Incident Response and Critical Infrastructure Act, which requires critical infrastructure companies. And by the way, the industry list, it's pretty long. So it's interesting to see how this will pan out. But yes, it's going to start mandating the reporting of whether it is a ransom payment within 24 hours or a cyber incident within 72 hours. So that will help dramatically. However, I still think we're 2 to 3 years away from that actual reporting. CISA just put out a asking for public information on feedback on what should be included in the report, what shouldn't be included in the report. So they're at the first stage right now, initially. So a long road to hoe, but we're getting there.
I got nothing.
Yeah, with CIRSA, yeah, like Joel said, it's, I think, closer to 3 to 4 years because it is the federal government. So we created a rule, but not an actual methodology for executing the rule. So I think that's going to be the big requirement, statutory requirement to report, and that's how we're going to get information. Again, volunteering information is always better for everybody versus the compelled information.
You had a question over there. Okay.
We've talked about y'all being involved during and or after events. What about building communities, communication between your organizations and the companies, between the different companies for information sharing before the fact?
So again, like Alan said, I think earlier, he's definitely seen a more positive engagement with law enforcement. I think that's because overall, again, we're taking that more of whole of government approach, and we recognize that it's more important for us to work with you and to work with other cybersecurity firms to develop that expertise and understanding as to what's occurring. As for before an incident occurs, one of our pillars of our strategy for FBI, and I'm sure for Secret Service as well, is that engagement. We're saying contact us before you have an incident, not when you do have an incident. So more and more, we are regularly getting out, speaking to companies. We work very closely with our private sector coordinators at the FBI to engage with companies, to engage with different industries, to, again, get that word out and have discussions with them. I participated on multiple tabletop exercises where, again, we provided that insight for the victims to understand how to communicate, because oftentimes they'll email you about an incident, which is not fantastic. So we are doing more of that proactive engagement.
And I would just echo that too. Like, we were really big in Portland, both not just the Portland Police Bureau, but also FBI and Secret Service, of doing a lot of community outreach. And that really came with like getting together with like business alliances, getting together with different network administration meetings, and just letting them know like what we're capable of doing and what we can do. And that's generally how we would initially get some of those side channel conversations going or notifications going.
Yeah, and prior to coming down to DC, I was up in New Jersey, and we would host a New Jersey, New York quarterly meeting for the public, for businesses to come and, again, get to know us, build that rapport, bounce off questions, whatever it may be related to cyber incidents. And again, that continuity happened quarterly. And then tell them, go out and reach to your competitors, your industry partners, your other organizations, bring them next time. So that outreach and that prevention, we're really trying hard on that angle. That's from my perspective.
Question in the corner.
Hello there.
Hello, Brian.
So I have one question that I think everybody has kind of talked around, but nobody's actually asked it yet. So give me the elevator pitch, and I know we're up on lunch, but why would I share with you when I am a small business who has a ransomware case, and I have servers to rebuild, I have lawyers to engage, I have to rebuild all this stuff. I have to do all of these things. Like, what are you going to give me back that is actually worthwhile to get you involved?
Yeah, maybe not in the short term, but I think, again, it's a slippery slope that gets into a larger picture, right? Like, you may not see the benefits today, you as a whatever business you're running, but you also prevent, right? You sharing those TTPs and us getting it back and scrubbing. We saw one of those presentations today about scrubbing and anonymizing. We get that out to CISA, and it is a resource for other businesses that are going to tackle that same situation shortly, right? Albeit. Also, long shot, but when we do get a bad actor and we do seize their Ferraris and they're 2.5 million in crypto, do you want restitution payments from it? I mean, again, it's a long shot, but it does happen, and some people do get the money back. So, there is that component too, depending on. But, it is a tough question. It's the question we fight every day, so it is the elephant in the room.
So what can I do for Brymore Labs? Was that the question? Yeah, gotcha. I think, ultimately, at the end of the day, we're working a parallel mission. Maybe the end game's a little bit different, right? So like earlier, some of the speakers were talking about how they weren't concerned with attribution, where that's really the primary focus on our mind. Like, that is the driving force for us. resources really is probably the biggest thing that I can bring. Ultimately, is just some additional resources to the table, and however those can be leveraged or however those resources can be used, that's the honest advantage that I can give.
So yeah, again, if you're a small business, we'll bring that threat hunting capability to help you identify how the actors got in. We'll provide again those additional information, the IOCs that can help you prevent from that reinfection occurring. And then again, like Joel said, it's being able to hold actors accountable, and then providing some of that restitution back to you.
Other questions? Yeah, one question.
Given what you've just been saying, do you have procedures in place where, given the amount of data you have, you find, given an investigation you're working, you find activity against a second client that maybe doesn't know about it, do you reach out, do you cold call those other victims?
So yeah, if we identify potential victimization of another victim, we'll reach out to the victim, provided it's information that we've developed. Obviously, also it's going to depend upon how we develop that information, that it doesn't expose that first client, because again, we treat all information with the utmost confidentiality. And so whenever you're hearing about leaks of compromise, it's not coming from the government. It's often coming from people within that entity or organization. So that's how we'll provide it back.
All right, well then,
sweet.
One more quick follow-up then. When there's a compromise in, say, a US and UK, same company, multiple offices, do you coordinate across countries as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually this goes back to the previous question. When we're also talking about incident response, the sooner you engage us, the earlier we can then understand what's occurring, and we can understand maybe if the actor has maybe parked the data at a site or a server where they're waiting to then pull it down. So then sometimes we can pull that data back. Also, depending on what you've done, if you've already paid the ransom, we might be able to claw some of those funds back. So those are two other instances where we can then again assist if we are engaging. I'm sorry, as I was going back to that one. Say your question again.
Maybe I'll just talk for most people in the room. In that, what authorities would you need? And then when I say would you need, I mean like royal federal government.
All right.
What authorities would you need to actually put a game-changing solution to ransomware? Is there anything that can be done? Contacting Cyber Command for specific attributed nation states or whatever.
So while I like,
or is this just going to be continued?
Yeah, well, I liked Alan's ideas of warheads on foreheads for ransomware actors. It's just again, like you have to think of that you're engaging with other sovereign individuals and other sovereign nations, right? And it's just not appropriate for us. What we are doing again is leveraging more and more with our international partners all around the world to impact the infrastructure, right? And again, while we're talking about whack-a-mole and we joke about it, it's going to take someone else time off of target to then reconstitute their infrastructure, right? And so that's something that we're going to do. Yes, it's whack-a-mole for us, but it's also whack-a-mole for them. So that's one thing. I don't think there's an additional authority, right, that we can do or use because many of the actors are located overseas. They're located in countries where we don't have extradition treaties. But I guess what I want to impress upon everybody is that regardless of where an individual is located, we're still going to work to develop those charges and to identify means if we can, again, impact them with their sanctions, impact their infrastructure, or again, be ready to arrest them should they decide to leave the warm confines of a walled country.
I think something I just want to add to all of this, just in case you weren't aware of this, is you have a whole group, a host of individuals that work both locally and for the federal government that are eager to help. And so that kind of goes back to Brian's question earlier, is like there's a bunch of folks that really want to get involved and they really want to help. Defining like what that means though, at the end of the day, that's going to depend on what that particular instance is in terms of level of success, right? Because everyone's level of success or what they think is successful is determined by kind of what that organization's definition of success is. And it might differ from what our end game is with attribution, but we're still working towards a good goal of success, which for us is going to be attribution. And again, just remember, you got men and women out there that really do want to get involved, that want to help. We're not there to step on anyone's toes. We're not there to like dictate the process necessarily. Just as altruistic as it sounds, literally just lend some sort of support. Whatever that level of support is, ultimately that's up to you guys. You guys really, in my experience, I'll speak for me, dictate and drive like our level of involvement and in terms of like how intrusive our involvement might seem or feel, right? And sometimes it might seem a little overly intrusive just because maybe we wear the big, hat of the federal government or local law enforcement, and that's really not what we're there for at all.
Yeah, no additional authorities, right? But I was going to say, this was something that you said that kind of reminded me of it. If we have MLATs or mutual legal treaties in place, we can work with our foreign partners to get the information we need. Then there are authorities that are above, I think, federal law enforcement. Obviously, we start talking about offensive operations and the IC world and things that's not our objective. However, with other countries that those MLATs aren't in place. And so there are tools, but again, we're not going to be, that's not in our wheelhouse to do. Oh, yeah.
I will say that when we hear, or when we get a call, I think my team does get excited when we hear that the actor is still on the network, because then that then does provide some opportunities where we can mess with them. And so I think that's just something, again, like obviously if the actor's gone, that's great, that's fantastic. But that is, again, something that we are keeping in mind, again, whole of government, leveraging authorities across the board, be it IC or law enforcement, to, again, just make it more difficult for those actors.
All right, we are way over time. This has been great, honestly, of all the discussions and whatever. I think you guys are still around for at least lunch and various things, so feel free to ask follow-up questions. I do want to close with one question, though. As a closing question on kind of a short, kind of success story that you can talk about, that you're kind of proud of you all getting involved, with some investigations.
So I'm going to sound corny and hokey. I would say anytime that we engage with a victim and they're able to recover some of the data or recover some of their funds, that's a success. I will go old school out of the Washington, D.C. office. We had the CTB locker investigation. That's going back to 2017, and I think that disruption with those arrests overseas, again, that highlighted international law enforcement to bring those actors to justice. One of the first ransomware families to leverage affiliates. So I'd say that was a huge success, and that was done in coordination with U.S. Secret Service as well.
I think I'd probably fall back to the recent QBot case that I did, because it came in kind of uniquely in that it was initiated by a patrol call, and it looked like it was ultimately going to be like an insider either theft or fraud case that turned into be a much larger QBot investigation that then was attributed to a much larger case that was in the LA office. And the nice thing about that is it was done from the ground level all the way up through identification and of the actual malware, of the actual binary, and then pushing that out to a much larger ongoing case that was being run out of the LA office.
And quickly, and I'm going to try to scrub this very generically. However, this is an ongoing thing that we're seeing, right? It makes me want to foot stomp the reporting, and I'm so glad, again, albeit 5 years from now, but here we have a actor that we have attribution to. We're seeing ransom payments being made to his private wallet. We have full transparency in that. Old Carter, nothing new, right? We're tracking it. Again, you just follow the bad guys, and you'll catch them. However, the problem is with all these ransomware payments, there's no repository for me to go to ping on our section to go and look and say, oh, okay, that payment belonged to this victim. Okay, there's our venue, there's whatever. It's been extremely difficult. We found some victims that belonged in Europe. That doesn't give us venue here in the United States. So we're trying like this magic out of our hat to try to figure out, all right, who the hell are these victims, right? Even though now we have the bad guy. It's like catching a burglar on the street. His car's loaded down with jewelry and all this stuff. He's a known burglar. You got him, but no one's made a police report, so you let him go, right? And that's the frustrating part. So that's why I guess my foot stomp on reporting.
Awesome. All right, well, thank you very much for everyone for joining us. We appreciate your time and your interest for this. Thank you very much.